Does Ohio State need a veteran quarterback? Does Colorado need another running back? Let's take a look at some programs and what they could hope to find out about themselves in the spring practices, and if there's anything out there worth going to get. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. Thank you for joining us here. We talk college football year round. So if you're into that, hit that subscribe button and like this video and answer the comment below. Do you think your program, maybe it's Ohio State, maybe it's Colorado, needs another player at one or two positions to fill out the roster? We've come to the part of the calendar where people are going to start practicing spring football. And spring football is going to look like it's never looked before in college. It's going to resemble that of NFL OTAs. As a matter of fact, I thought at the top of the list for a segment would have been Ryan Day just saying out loud, we're probably not going to tackle very much at all during these 15 practices, and we're not going to do a traditional spring game, though we are inviting many to the shoe for something like a spring football showcase. This is speaking to what the current climate for college football demands. Ryan Day's Ohio State Buckeyes played 16 games to win the national championship. It is the longest season in college football history. For those of y'all that are old enough, you will remember the regular season used to end before Thanksgiving, and we were playing bowl games 6 weeks later if we were playing bowl games at all. But over the past 50 years, we really evolved the sport. We've gone from picking a national champion based on voters, primarily in the East Coast, so the biases were toward the East Coast teams, to putting together something like a championship game in the Bowl Alliance that comes out of, again, voting to see who we think should be playing in something like a national championship game, though it was kind of called that after the fact. The Fiesta Bowl might be for the national championship, but it was never called the national championship. It was always called the Fiesta Bowl. And then we graduated to the Bowl Championship Series, which used computers and human rankings to decide who merited being in that conversation and then who would ultimately play for the national championship. None of these have given us really great results. We've got to the college football playoff, which started with 4 teams, which many people still believe is a good idea for the most part, even though we kind of learned over the 10 years of playing the 14 format that we usually end up with 3 teams that we think are good enough to play for the national championship based on what we've seen on the field and what the scoreboard ultimately reflects. But then we came into some really uncomfortable situations, right? 2017, Central Florida goes undefeated. They win the Peach Bowl. They beat Auburn. They crown themselves national champions because they didn't get to play for the college football playoff national championship. Then, right around the time that we had decided we were probably going to go toward a 12-team playoff, Cincinnati breaks in as the first team outside of the Power 4 to make it to the invitational, that is 14 playoff. They get boat raced by Alabama. Then we get to put that idea down, but there's so much money that's being generated from having a playoff, a tournament, that you've seen more teams that want to get involved, and you've seen the expansion of the field to 12 teams. So what we end up with is a Boise State playing in the Fiesta Bowl against the Penn State team that beats them like they stole something, but a Boise State team that gets to have its magic year, not unlike Cincinnati in 2021 or Central Florida in 2017, and gets to say we played for the Fiesta Bowl and we made the college football playoff and we made a little bit of bank to bring home to Idaho. Now we've entered into a conversation where the 12-team playoff has also given us our first real opportunity to see somebody run the table, and that's what we got. We got Ohio State beating Tennessee, beating Oregon, beating Texas, beating Notre Dame to win a national championship. The result has been more teams are going all in on trying to pay for their rosters to level them up, not unlike what Indiana did with its remarkable turnaround, winning 11 games for the first time in school history after never winning 10 in school history, making the college football playoff in Kurt Cignetti's year 1, bringing home a bunch of money and more support and more acclaim to their university. So you've seen more programs want to do what Boise State has done, what Arizona State did, picked dead last by professionals, ends up winning the conference, make the college football playoff, goes into the semifinals and quarterfinals and really put on a great display against Texas, bringing a claim to Arizona State. So now that you know you're paying for these rosters and you know you're playing a longer season, the natural thing for you to do is asset management. You're going to try to protect the assets that you have by not displaying them, not putting them out for sale so that other people could probably outbid you for 1 or 2 players. Carnell Tate, for instance, at Ohio State turned down $1 million to enter the transfer portal, not just to go anywhere, but just to go in there so that somebody might have an opportunity to go get him. Nebraska led the charge on this, but many programs have decided not to go with the spring game because they don't see the benefit there, right? Even if you played on television, it's diminishing returns at this point because you need your roster to stay intact. With the spring portal window still being here, I think this might be the last time we see this. You could see players that have a great spring game go into the portal, and then all of a sudden you have to go and build at a place where you thought you were going to be strong. So on top of that, you're less likely to risk injury by having any of your star players do anything meaningful during the spring period, because the last thing you want is for one of your players to suffer a non-contact injury or even a contact injury that's going to prevent them from playing any part of the regular season and is going to frankly take away from hits they might need to take in November, December, when you're absolutely having to play for championships or play to get into the playoff that you were taking against each other. So I don't expect Ohio State to hurt anybody in earnest until they play Texas on August 31st. Now, what you've seen is not just Ryan Day saying we're not tackling. You've also seen more teams go, hey, we're going to not put that $4 million, $3 million quarterback on display for you to see. Now, on top of all of that, you might need to add a couple of players here and there to fill out your roster, and that means perhaps going to poach from those that you know got players and or seeing what's left in the portal. The problem with going into the portal now is you're no longer going to find any starters there. That happened in the winter. And if you missed in the winter, you're probably going to overpay for something that you didn't get in the winter in the spring, and it's probably not going to be as good as the thing you wanted in the winter. So if you are Colorado and you were dead last in rushing yards per game, I mean, paltry, 65 yards rushing per game for Colorado, which is 133 out of 133, and 11 yards behind Kent State, who was garbage in 2024, right? They had like 76 rush yards per game, and you had 65. Some of this is offensive line. Some of this was the style of the offense, with Deion Sanders being at the controls and Travis Hunter being out wide with a quartet of wide receivers that were really, really great. I put Colorado's wide receiver core in top 5. It is really great with Jimmy Horn, with Travis Hunter, with Will Shepard, and then you could add guys like LeJontay Wester, and you could even keep going down the line to Omarion Miller and even Draylon Miller. They were studded there. You understood. But you also had a guy like Dallin Hayden, who we thought would help you with Dylan Edwards going into the transfer portal coming out of Kansas State. Ended up being a pretty great player for them. It would have been fun to watch Caden Salter and Dylan Edwards play together, but now you're going to have to settle for Dallin Hayden or Michael Welsh or Isaiah Augusta next to Caden Salter. So if Marshall Faulk is able to go into the portal and go get somebody, you want that. And that is what Marshall Faulk was brought in to do. It was a loud recognition about one of the deficiencies left on this Colorado team that won 9 games last year. You got to be able to run the football. That means you got to have tailbacks. That means you got to get guys to the second level. Once they get to the second level, it's up to them. Okay? That's the rule. The rule is the offensive line is going to make a hole. Okay? They're going to get you the linebacker. Now it's up to you to make the linebacker miss or run him over. Get to the third level. That's also on you. And I think that is why you want to run the football. That's the reason why running backs exist, is so you can get to the second level and out-athlete the guy in front of you. That is going to be a bugaboo for them when they play Georgia Tech, who was really solid against the run last year. I expect them to be solid against the run this year. But after that, they get all of their really tough games at home. BYU is at home. Iowa State is at home, right? Arizona State is at home. You have an opportunity to put together a pretty outstanding season once again, back-to-back years for Coach Prime. I do think that if there's a running back to go get, you go get him. I don't know that there's going to be one, right? For Ohio State, do you need a veteran presence at quarterback? No. Do you want a veteran presence at quarterback? Yes. They had that in Devin Brown. He chose to transfer to Cal, where he's probably going to start for Justin Wilcox and that team. You also lost Aaron Nolan to South Carolina, who is going to back up Lenore Sellers, who head coach has equated him to Superman and thought he should be up for the Heisman last year. I don't believe that, but Aaron Nolan is a very different quarterback from the kind that Lenore Sellers is. And it also signals to me that South Carolina would like to be able to move the football down the field through the air. That's just not Lenore Sellers' jam. Ohio State, on the other hand, is going to be trying to find veteran leadership from guys that have not led veterans, period. Tavian St. Clair is a true freshman. Lincoln Kienholz is an underclassman who has not yet led. And Julian Sayin is the most talented of those quarterbacks, but also a guy that has not yet led. That said, we've had players that say, Julian Sayin seems like the guy, right? Denzel Burke went out of his way to say, hey, look, he spins it. He spins it well. He understands the game. He loves the game, and he's invested. Unless he is remarkably awful, and I mean remarkably, I expect him to be the starting quarterback. But if he were to get hurt, are you comfortable with Lincoln Kienholz? Are you comfortable with Tavian St. Clair? And that's more about the coaching staff than it is about the players. But if you can go get a veteran presence, like I think Jaden Rashada might have a spot there for that reason, same reason he was at Georgia, frankly, you go do that. And I think there's going to be opportunities to do that at the quarterback position. Do you need to do it? No. But I did think that this was worth unearthing and talking about. Who do you think your program needs to go get? Do you think you need depth on the defense? Where and how? Let me know in the comments below.